any further delay in concerted global action, and we will miss the brief and a rapidly closing window to secure a livable future.
We know that the Philippines is a nation at risk from multiple climate and natural hazards. The choices we make in the next decades will determine our future. Despite a narrowing window for action, the report tells us that a climate-resilient society is still possible.
The key message of the recent IPCC report is clear. We are racing with time to address the current climate crisis. We need a whole of government and whole of society approaches to address this menace. We should act swiftly and collectively before it's too late.
It cannot be said that the Philippines is not working on climate change action, but what is important is we have to calibrate our perspectives, the fundamental scientific grounding of the government's PAPs, for example, making sure that these are fit for purpose, that these are anticipatory, that they are intended to minimize, avert, or address loss and damage. What are the costs for not doing anything? What is the administrative and political requirement doing so? In this stage of our history, we are a government in transition. We consider this report as a take-off point to really push forward for reforms in terms of policies, regulations, communication, convergences, and support concerning the various actions that may be perceived to be fragmented or incoherent.
From addressing immediate hunger towards early recovery of the public health system, towards early recovery of shelters, there's a process in responding. There is a limit to what the local governments can do, and therefore there is really a need for regional and national governments to act also. So how do we plan strategically? Next is, what are the available technologies that we could use and that are available for local consumption? And what are the necessary policy changes on the local level so that we could immediately reflect the necessary change considering the urgency of the impacts?
So for the private sector, the main challenge here is, number one, to step beyond the traditional role of donor in the relief and response when disasters occur. And these types of participation in the post-disaster activities really may only address the immediate and near-term climate risk. Secondly, it needs to recognize that the cost impacts of disruptions to business due to both slow and rapid onset climate-related hazards are actually opportunities to invest in the resilience of natural, human, and engineered systems, which could be vital to the private sector's own survival. The private sector needs to be actively involved in building multi-stakeholder partnerships for evidence-informed, inclusive, and adaptive leadership across all levels. And so that has both a horizontal and a vertical challenge to it in terms of coherence and implementation. These partnerships should be driven by shared resilient development goals, and they must be based on the understanding of the complex intersections between human, ecological, economic, infrastructure, and security factors. We need to recognize the options for transformational adaptation by looking into the intersectionality of vulnerability.
The means of implementation have to be clear and have to be provided. And that goes from finance, capacity building, technology, governance, ensuring there's an enabling environment for everyone to really participate in making our country resilient. It's very critical that we get our cities and municipalities that are already also experiencing impacts of climate change to imbibe really adaptation and really involve everyone in an integrative, inclusive manner. At the end of the day, it's also getting us to have that behavioral change. If adaptation is something that we will be doing, then it also has to be something that we should be imbibing on a daily basis.
The IPCC report tells us we need to confront the way warming oceans can supercharge any of the 20 typhoons that enter the Philippines area of responsibility annually, and the way rising temperatures adversely affect agriculture and human health, and how it links to other aspects of development, such as migration and our long-term development strategy that would allow us to thrive and not just survive. It's also time to localize the IPCC reports, given the country's archipelagic context. Climate change impacts are locally specific and vary from place to place, and we need local scientists now more than ever to generate more new research as well as validate, interact, and contribute to the global scientific effort. We have yet to utilize our existing climate financial flows, which is estimated to be around somewhere between 5 billion US dollars. Financial instruments such as climate and disaster risk finance and insurance instruments will play an important role in plugging some of the gaps that our climate frontliners, the local governments and communities have to deal with every day.
There's a whole ecosystem of climate finance that unfortunately we have not been able to tap because of our scale. Our scale is so immodest. You cannot mitigate, you cannot adapt if you do not restore people to where they were when they're hit by climate change. Ano kaya yung nawala, di ba? Dahil sa pagbabago ng panahon, pagbabago ng klima. At ano pang malapit nang mawala.